When experts first examined this portrait from 1860, they realized something about it made no sense. Dr. Sarah Morrison, who had spent 2 decades studying Civil War-era photographs at the Smithsonian, had seen thousands of images. Nothing prepared her for what arrived anonymously on a cold morning in early 2019. It was a small photo in a worn leather case with a short note that simply read, 1860 Philadelphia. The portrait showed 2 people posed in an elegant studio setting. The woman wore a detailed Victorian dress with layers of lace and a striking brooch. The man stood beside her in a finely made suit with silk touches. At first glance, it looked like another formal photo from the tense years before the Civil War. But as Sarah lifted the image toward the light, something about it felt different. The picture was too upscale for ordinary people of that time. Studio portraits in 1860 were extremely expensive and far out of reach for most working-class families. The woman's dress alone included imported lace, careful beadwork, and a brooch designed to shine. The man's clothing looked tailored and expensive. Their posture and calm, direct expression suggested confidence and status. When Sarah examined the photo under her magnifying lamp, she spotted something almost invisible in the lower right corner. It was a small symbol she had encountered only twice in her career, a tiny quilted design hidden in the photographer's studio mark. She immediately reached for her reference books. This was not just any portrait. It was linked to something once illegal and dangerous, something wiped from many American history lessons. She quickly called Dr. Marcus Hayes, an expert on abolition-era record at Harvard. He began to protest that he was busy preparing his spring lectures, but Sarah cut in. It's a craft photograph from 1860, 2 years after they published their memoir. There was silence on the line. Then Marcus whispered, "Are you sure the studio mark matches James Bington's coded signature?" When she confirmed it, he replied, "Then this is only the second confirmed photograph of them together. I'll be there in 4 hours." Sarah sat back, her heart pounding. The woman in the photo looked calm but determined. The man appeared steady and protective. They could pass as wealthy members of Philadelphia society, which was exactly what made their story so sensitive and why this photograph had long been absent from classrooms. When Marcus arrived that evening, he walked straight to the lab where the photograph rested under archival glass. He studied every detail, then saw the mark. His face went pale. "This is real," he whispered. They compared the image with known references. James Bington had operated a studio in Philadelphia between 1855 and 1863. He was a Quaker who quietly photographed freedom seekers who reached the North. The quilted square pattern was his hidden signature for portraits connected to that network. Only 17 of his images were known to survive. Many had been destroyed because they could have been used by slave catchers, even after the Civil War began. Bington himself burned his record books in 1863 after threats from Confederate supporters. The story of William and Ellen Craft was well known among historians of the Underground Railroad, but physical records of their lives after they reached freedom were extremely limited. In December 1848, they had done the unthinkable. They escaped from Georgia by traveling openly through the South, staying in hotels, riding first-class trains, and eating in public restaurants. Ellen disguised herself as a wealthy, sickly white man heading north for medical treatment. William played the role of her attentive servant. It was bold and incredibly dangerous. A single suspicious look or wrong word could have led to their capture and brutal punishment. Looking at Ellen's dress in the 1860 image, Sarah noted that she was wearing the kind of clothing she never could have worn while enslaved. "This portrait is a statement," Sarah said. Marcus agreed. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 meant that even in free states, slave catchers could use portraits like this to identify and legally seize people who had escaped. That was why photographs of freedom seekers from this period were so rare. The risk was too high. Then why take this risk? Sarah asked quietly as she studied Ellen's face. Why pay for a formal portrait that could have put them in danger? For 3 long days, Sarah and Marcus analyzed the photograph using every safe method possible. They examined it under different types of light, used digital microscopes, and compared it with images from the era. On the 4th morning, exhausted but determined, Sarah noticed something that changed everything. While zooming in on the brooch at Ellen's throat in a high-resolution scan, she froze. Under extreme magnification, the brooch held hidden lettering. It was almost impossibly small, tucked into the metal design. Only a skilled craftsman could have engraved it. "Marcus," she called, struggling to keep steady. He rushed over as she enhanced the image. In tiny lettering around the border were the words "Liberty or Death" and "EC 1848. "EC," Marcus said softly. "Ellen Craft." She signed it, but the brooch held more. In the center was a tiny, detailed map, showing the route from Georgia to Philadelphia. Several stops were marked using symbols only someone familiar with the journey would understand. "This is not just a portrait," Sarah said. "She is wearing a coded record of their entire escape." Marcus began writing quickly in his notebook. Historians had known the major cities involved, but not the specific stops or safe houses. This brooch revealed details hidden for more than 170 years. One marked place especially puzzled them, a Georgia city less than 100 miles from where the Crafts' escape began. Why mark a place connected to their life in bondage? Sarah pulled up 1848 census records. Macon, she found, had a small but active free black community during the 1840s, including skilled workers and merchants. One name stood out to her, a dressmaker named Ruth who ran a respected shop serving wealthy customers across central Georgia. She traveled regularly for business, buying fabrics and materials in major southern cities. Marcus immediately understood the implications. Her business gave her a perfect cover for moving information and supplies without raising suspicion. They dug deeper and learned that Ruth had gained her freedom in 1842 through a former enslaver's will. With a small inheritance, she started her own business and built a reputation. Then Sarah found something remarkable in an 1848 merchant ledger. 5 days before Craft's escape, Ruth had purchased men's clothing, travel items, bandages, and medical supplies. She created Ellen's entire disguise, Sarah said. The suit, the bandages, everything. 3 days later, an older woman named Grace arrived at the Smithsonian carrying a worn leather bag. She had called ahead, saying she had information about the photograph and the woman who made the escape possible. In a quiet research room, she introduced herself as Ruth's great-great-granddaughter. She opened a well-kept family Bible filled with keepsakes and a letter dated December 1848. Her family had protected these items for generations, keeping Ruth's role hidden to avoid danger long after the war ended. The letter described how Ruth and 3 other free black business owners in Macon had spent months planning the Crafts' escape. Ruth had made 6 different suits, improving the disguise each time. Ellen practiced walking, sitting, and even signing documents with her left hand, all while keeping her right arm in a sling. Marcus listened carefully. Historians had long wondered why Ellen's face and hand were heavily bandaged. Many thought it was simply to avoid attention. Grace explained that the bandages served for specific purposes, all part of Ruth's careful plan. She then took out a small, fragile journal bound in faded blue cloth, ready to share more. Ruth kept careful notes on everyone she helped between 1842 and 1855. She documented 97 people in total. As she handed her small journal to Sarah with great care, she explained that William and Ellen's case was unlike all the others. Their plan required more preparation, more risk, and more coordination. Sarah opened the journal slowly. The entries were written in a mix of plain English, symbols, and short coded marks. The writing was neat, showing that Ruth made these notes when she had quiet moments and no immediate danger. "Is this a cipher?" Sarah asked as she scanned the pages. Grace nodded. "A simple substitution code. Ruth learned it from a traveling Methodist preacher named Samuel, who secretly worked with a communication network that stretched across 5 states. Ruth made 2 entries for each person she helped. 1 entry when they first arrived, and another when they safely reached freedom and sent word back. Marcus photographed each page with the archive's high-resolution camera. Most of the journal entries were very brief, using only initials, dates, and general destinations like North or Canada. But the section for William and Ellen covered 6 full pages. These pages included Ruth's thoughts, concerns, and notes on the preparation process. Marcus read one entry dated December 3rd, 1848, translating the code as he went. It described Ellen arriving after dark with Samuel, frightened but determined. Ruth noted that Ellen's features would help her pass if people did not look too closely, but her posture and behavior needed training. She also wrote that William was watchful, smart, and very aware of the danger they were facing. Ruth reminded herself that even the best plans could fall apart in front of an experienced slave catcher. The journal also revealed key details historians never knew. The escape had been delayed twice. Once because Ellen became sick with a fever. Another delay came when a well-known slave catcher named Hughes was seen working in Charleston, directly on their travel path. Ruth's network sent a warning, and the crafts waited 3 tense weeks until Hughes left the area. Sarah kept thinking about a strange note in Ruth's journal from December 20th. Ruth wrote that Ellen knew what she needed to do in Baltimore and that a package was ready and hidden. Sarah wondered what this meant. Marcus spent the next week in restricted archives in Maryland. He found a report from early 1849, written by the same slave catcher Ruth had mentioned. In it, Hughes complained about a skilled group producing high-quality forged freedom papers. He never realized William and Ellen had passed through Baltimore, but he knew someone was making documents he could not stop. This helped Sarah understand that the Crafts had been carrying supplies to support a larger effort, not just escaping for themselves. Marcus also found 3 freedom papers filed in Baltimore right after Crafts reached Philadelphia. All belonged to people connected to Macon, and the writing matched the work Hughes had described. Ruth's network had created a system that allowed others to gain long-term safety. He later found a private letter where Hughes admitted he had been tricked by a sickly gentleman and his servant. He had seen the Crafts in person without recognizing them. Meanwhile, Sarah found school records from the late 1800s showing that an Atlanta board member pushed or removed the photograph and story from textbooks. His campaign eventually blocked it in 42 states. As Sarah and Marcus prepared their findings, Grace revealed a silk map hidden in Ruth's Bible. It showed a network of free black business owners who helped people escape through carefully planned routes. The map dated back to 1839, proving the system had operated for years in secrecy.